Alright, so I'm going to demo that student progress checker practice for you. So in the instructions, it says we need 4 inputs. We need a student name, grade 1, grade 2, and grade 3. And then in our JavaScript, we're going to create a function that finds the average of those grades and then checks if they passed or if they failed, and then we'll display a message with their name if they passed or if they failed. And then we'll commit everything and push to GitHub, and then we'll also show you how to deploy on Netlify. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go to GitHub. We're going to create a new repo with this little plus sign, new repository. We're going to name it Student Progress Checker. Alright, we're going to keep it public, no template, we'll add a readme, and no get ignore or license. So we'll just go to create repository. So once we created our repository, it brings us to the repository page. So the next thing we'll do is we'll go to VS Code. And once we get into VS Code, it'll have this welcome message. And under the start section, we'll click on this clone git repository. So we'll click clone git repository, and then at the top, clone from GitHub will pop up. So we'll click that, and then it's going to show us a list of all of our repos. And we're going to choose the first one, the student progress checker. And then it's going to ask us where we want to save the project folder. So in my case, I have it in Documents, Codex, Codex TA, but yours might be different. And then it'll ask us if we want to open it, so we're going to open. So currently we only have a README, we don't have anything else. So the first thing we're going to want to do is create an index.html file. Okay, the shortcut to get the boilerplate is Shift exclamation point. We'll click that first one, and it has just the boilerplate with the doc type, the HTML, the head, and the body. I usually change this title to whatever the project name is, Student Progress Checker. So the next thing we're going to want to do is get our Bootstrap links. So we could go to Bootstrap. You could just search Get Bootstrap and it'll bring you to this page. And we scroll down till the CDN, and we're going to need this link. So we'll copy it and we'll put it inside the head of our HTML. And then we're also going to get the script tag, script link, I guess you could call it. And we'll paste that. Alright, usually the next thing I do is I use like a H1 to kind of label our web page. So student progress checker. Right. So if you have Live Server installed from the extensions, you could actually right click the file and select Open with Live Server, and it's going to open into a browser, and we see we have our header right here. We don't have anything else. Alright, so in the instructions we know we need 4 inputs, so we're probably going to need a label and an input. So since we have Bootstrap, we could utilize the docs and search for forms, or scroll down here to form control. And what I do is we need a label and an input, like right here. So what I do is I'll take this first group, because we group our label and inputs in divs. So I usually just copy that and I go back into my HTML and we'll paste that in. So let's see. We have a div, and then inside that div we have a label and an input. So this first group of form elements are going to be for the student name. So we'll go in and change email address to student name. And you see how they have a for attribute and an ID and they're the same. So what we're going to do is change that to student name from the example form input. And we'll have to make sure the ID on the input is the same. That way it knows that those two go together. Okay, we could delete this placeholder. The placeholder is, I'll show you. You see how it has name at email right here? That's what the place, it's like instructions, but since we have a label, we already know that this input is going to be for student name, so we don't really need to have a placeholder in this case. So what we'll do is just delete that. All right. And also, if you notice, the Bootstrap inputs are the whole width of the page. So I don't really like that. So what I usually do is I'll wrap all of my form elements in a div. And we'll use Bootstrap classes to define a width for it. So in Bootstrap, if we want to fix the width, we go W dash, and then it goes by percentages. So in this case, we can just do 50, so 50%, so it would be half of the page. So we see our input is now half the width of the page. Alright, so let's continue with our other inputs. So what I'll do is I will copy this first group and we'll just paste it 3 times so we have all the inputs, and then we'll just go edit it. So we'll change student name to grade 1. We'll change the content of the label to grade 1. We'll change the ID of the input, grade 1. And then we'll change the type. Oh, I didn't change type up here. So this one will be text. And the type for the grade will be number. Okay. So then we'll make one for the grade 2. Oh. Change the type to number and the ID to grade 2. So we'll do the third grade 3. And we'll change the ID to grade 3. And the type, number. Alright, we're going to save that and let's go look at our live server to see what we got. Alright, so we have our student name label, our input, our grade 1 label, our input, our grade 2, and then our input. And you see how there's these little arrows? So whenever you use the type number on your inputs, it has these arrows, so you can change the number this way, or you could just type it in. All right, so we have our grade 3. So the next thing that we'll need is a button. And we'll name this button Get Average. And we could use Bootstrap classes to kind of style it. So the syntax is btn, and then btn dash a color. And so btn dash danger is going to be red. If you go to Bootstrap and look up buttons, I think it'll probably be easier if I search. Yeah. We see we have, these are like the built-in colors, and so they have the names of all the colors. So you see that it's class, btn, space, btn dash, and then the name of the color, the built-in colors. All right, so if we go here, we can see that our Bootstrap button, it's kind of big and it has like that border radius, and the text is going to be white and the background is red. So Bootstrap's just like an easier way to style things, really. All right, so the other thing that we'll need is in the instructions it says we want to give them a message saying that they passed or if they need to keep trying. So when we want to display a message, what we could do is have an empty div and give it an ID so we can access it in JavaScript. So I'm just going to name it message. All right. So now, like when we display our message, it'll pop up in this div. All right. So now we need to make our script file, our JavaScript. Okay. The first thing I usually do is add to console.log hello from script.js. And then we're going to need to connect our JavaScript to our HTML, and we do that with the script tag, and we use the source attribute, the src, and then it has to have the file name exactly right so it's connected. So we can test to make sure our script file is connected to our HTML by going to the live server, inspect, click on console, and we'll see that console log, that hello from script.js is logging, which means that our JavaScript file is connected to our HTML. So the next thing we need to do is get the elements from our HTML. So what we'll do is we'll initialize some variables and store, then we'll use the document.getElementById method to get those elements from HTML. So usually when I'm getting the elements, I use const keyword to initialize the variable, and the first one we have is student name, and then we use document.getElementById, and then parentheses and quotes, and it has to be the ID that is in our HTML. So it has to match this ID right here of the input. Okay. And so we also have grade 1, and then equals document dot get element by ID, grade 1. And then what I usually do is we can copy and then change the numbers. Okay. We also have that message div that we need to grab in our JavaScript. Alright, so now that we have all of our elements, we need to make a function. So when we're declaring a function, we use the function keyword followed by the name of our function. So in this case, I'm going to name it calculate average, followed by parentheses and curly brackets. And then inside the curly brackets, we'll put our logic. So the first thing we're going to need to do is this right here, the document.getElementById just gets the element. It doesn't get the value that's in the inputs, or usually with inputs on HTML and on the browser, if a user inputs something, it's automatically a string. So we're going to have to convert that to a number as well, because we can't perform formulas on strings. They have to be numbers. So we're going to have to get the value, and we're also going to have to convert it to a number. So, except for the student name can be the same, but we're still going to need the value of the student name. So since they're inputs, they're going to change over time, we can use the let keyword. So we'll initialize a variable of student name, and I'll do value equals student name, and then we'll use the dot value method, and then we'll do let grade 1 value equals grade 1, that grade 1 variable that we did on line 5, and then dot value. And then to convert to a number, we'll use a method called parse float. So we'll use parse float, and then in parentheses, we'll put that grade 1 dot value in it. So it looks like parse float. There we go. So this parse float, it kind of takes in account of the decimals. So in case somebody puts in decimal points, the float, that when you see float, that means a decimal. So it also takes in consideration of if just in case they add a decimal point and not a whole number. So it kind of takes care of both. So what we'll do is we'll copy this and paste it twice, and we'll just change the numbers. Alright, so now that we have those, what we could do is get the average. So let average equals, and I'm going to put them in parentheses. And we'll use these grade 1 value, grade 2 value, and grade 3 value. Grade 1 value plus grade 2 value plus grade 3 value divided by 3. All right, the next thing we're going to do is check if the average is greater than 70. If it is, we're going to give it we're going to display that message of congratulations. So since we have this on line 8, the message, so we got that div. So what we do is we're going to access that variable message, and we're going to use text content to change the text content inside that div. So right now it's nothing. So what we're going to do is have that equal to our message. So in this case, we want to include the student name, and right now we have that as a variable. So when we want to add words like strings and variables together, we use the backticks. And so we'll do congratulations. And then when we want to access that variable inside the backticks, we use the syntax for that is $ and squiggly. And we'll do student name value. And then you passed. We could also put their average, your grade average is, and then the syntax, the $ curly brackets, and then we can just pass that variable in there. So that is the first condition. So if average is greater than 70, if that's true, then they'll get this message. Otherwise, they will get the keep trying message. So again, we'll access that message variable. We'll use text content to add the text to the div. Then we'll use the backticks, and then we'll say keep practicing. And then we'll use that $ squiggly to access the student name. And then we can do your average is $ squigglies, and then we'll put average in there. All right, so that is it for our function. So in order for our function to work or to be used through our HTML is we're going to attach this function to the button. So once the user inputs everything that it needs to input, they're going to click that button and it's going to trigger this function. So we do that by using the onClick attribute. So inside our button opening tag, we'll use onClick equals, and we'll put that function name, that function call. So when we call a function, it's the name of the function followed by the parentheses. And we'll save that, and then we'll go to the live and we'll test it out. So we'll put our name. And then we'll click get average. Congratulations, you passed. Your grade average is 82. So let's try one that fails. Let's see. Keep practicing. Okay, so you see how they have all these decimal points right here? There's another method that we could use in our JavaScript. So when we call the average, what we could do is it's called toFixed. So it would be .toFixed, and we can set it to 2 decimal points. So it'll round, and then it'll just give us 2 decimal points instead of like a million. All right, let's try this again. All right, and see now it's at 2 decimal points. next thing we need to do is we need to commit our changes. So the first thing is git add period. That'll add all of our files. You see how they turn a different color and they have that A next to them. So they're staged and ready to commit changes. So the next thing is git commit and then a message. Okay, and then we're going to git push origin main. And now all of our, we'll check GitHub. And we see all of our files are now on GitHub. So the final thing I wanted to show you is Netlify. So we go to Netlify, we log in. Okay, and then we'll go to add new project, import an existing project, GitHub, and then usually I have to search. So student, here we go, student progress checker, and then we'll name it. And no spaces because it's gonna be, I had to put a 2 there, so no spaces. So instead of spaces you could use the dashes, and then that's it. And then we'll just do deploy, and then this will turn to green when it's ready. Alright, and so this is gonna be our URL. So this URL is what you would share once you're finished. So I think that is it. Until next time.